conversation. It's such a bummer that it's not on there, but anyways. Okay, let me bring that back. I will share this document with you guys. I love checklists where it's so easy to get carried away and forget some things that you need to do or ask or what have you. So I really like checklists. I live by them. Another thing I like to ask the lender in particular is if they can meet the contingency periods that are in the contract. Oftentimes buyers get a little carried away, or maybe their agents, and say, oh no, that lender can get that through in 18 to 17 days. And when you tell the lender, they're like, absolutely not, we need at least 21 or whatever. So it's really important, I think, to check in with them as well and say, hey, that's what's being offered. Can you meet those? Can you get that appraisal back in 5 days or whatever it is? So that is a helpful thing as well. Really important, obviously, when you receive offers for your seller, you are reviewing all those documents. You want to really take a look at the proof of funds. Sometimes you'll get multiple documents in. Do the math, see if those documents those balances actually equal the amount that's offered, right? I had one time where there was 4 proofs of funds and it was only about $60,000 and they were offering $120,000 down payment. So look at the documents closely to make sure that they are actually what you think they are. If you're asking to have disclosure documents included with the offer, make sure that's there. If they've either signed the disclosures IO cover letter, or even better, I love it, when they actually sign the major disclosures, if they are signing the pest inspection, home inspection, the TDS, those sort of things. And if they're offering anything, if they're not having one of the contingencies, making sure that contingency release is included and that it is it's filled out properly, right? That it's going to do what you want it to do. All right, what's the next step? Who else do you want to talk to?
The buyer's agent.
The buyer's agent. Well, again, most of this is pretty obvious. I'm sure you guys are doing, but it's nice to touch on it. Absolutely. Even if I have talked to the buyer's agent, I want the buyer's agent to have called me. Sometimes they don't, though. It's a little one of my little pet peeves. But whether or not they have, I typically call them just to verify, ask any questions. If there's something that we're considering countering, I may ask, hey, can they come up? And Randy's going to talk more about this in a minute. But, oh, is there a reason that they only, did $2,000 as their initial deposit? Or is there a reason? So you can find out what's going on a little more. Sometimes it's just an error. Gary recommends that we have the liquidated damages clause initialed by all parties. Well, if that comes over in an offer and it's not initialed, you can ask the buyer's agent about that. Hey, I noticed you didn't have the liquidated damages clause initialed. Are your buyers okay with that? Or is there a reason did they do that intentionally? So you can find out instead of sending off a counter, fixing a whole bunch of things that they're not going to agree to, right? We just want to make it as simple and straightforward as possible. So Randy has a really great strategy of how, if you have multiple offers, especially how he approaches that and how he approaches those buyer's agents. So go for it, Randy.
Well, hey, nice to see. I wish I could see everybody, but I know you're out there. There's at least 13 of you out there. One of the things that I've done, it's funny. I was at a Pearl Jam concert last night. And I was in line to get drinks, of course, just sodas. But I got a call from one of my agents, and my daughter-in-law says, "You're actually going to take that call?" And I said, "Hey, this is Freddie Diaz. He wouldn't call me if he didn't need me." And Freddie was in a multi-offer counter situation last night, and he told me that he multi-countered all the offers. And that one of the parties is pushing forward that they don't want to wait as long. And basically I stated that you need to call the other people that you multi-countered and tell them that you're going to shorten the time frame. You're not waiting till Saturday, you're waiting till tomorrow at noon. And I told him he should hit this class and just see a different way to do it. So anytime you do a standard multi-counter offer form, you're stating, typically a value. Some people will put in their highest and best price as their counter. They might change the terms in that. And what I do is first take a look at all the offers. I don't know if everybody can see this. I'll print it out. This is a document that we use to go over offers. And Parmita designed this for me. It works great for me. It has the property address, goes through, in this case, there was 8 offers on the property. The buyer's name, agent's phone number, initial contract price. Actually, it was this form was the initial. So initial contract price, earnest money, sales concession, down payment, loan amount, loan type, lender letter received, proof of funds on this, inspection contingencies, appraisal contingencies, loan contingencies, whether there's any. And then it goes down into possession date, offer response time, buyer must sell to close, is home under contract, buyer will occupy, inclusions beyond standards. Again, we'll send this out to you guys, a blank form to give you an idea. Seller to pay and what title company. So I go through these offers, and what I do, I look at each and every one of them, and then I call each agent up. And I can't tell you how many, and I've been doing this for a few years. I represented Luther Burbank Savings in selling the Clem Carinelli foreclosures and that. And I started doing that then because I couldn't get Luther Burbank to counter. And they just want highest and best. And I go, well, that's not really the greatest way to do it. And so I started just calling every agent. And what I found, which is interestingly enough, most agents will take the 3 top offers. If they get 8 offers, they would look at this. This particular property was listed for $669. Our lowest offer was $669. Our highest offer was $750. There was 2 offers at $750, then an offer at $735, and then it went down from there. So people might just take the 2 best offers or the 3 best offers and counter those. Well, and what I do is I give, and you've all heard this and you've all felt that way because I hear from agents all the time. I didn't even get a call back that my offer was rejected. I see that the seller has accepted an offer. Agent never even contacted me. It is so hard in this marketplace to know where you should start in an offer, right? Because so many times you're like, God, I think it'll go over, but how much over? We want to work for our client. We just don't want to throw a number out there. So we somehow start. And in a lot of those cases, your starting price ends up way lower than the other prices. What I have found, like in this case, this offer that ended up getting the property was literally I'm just taking a look at that. Literally was at 725, was one of our lowest offers that we received. And, a lot of you agents might not have ever countered them. But by me calling and saying, you can clean up your terms. Obviously, appraisals can be an issue when it goes over asking. We'd love to see the appraisal condition. I never tell anybody they have to do something. I make suggestions to them. I said you could better your price. It is not unethical by real estate standards to say that unless there's an NDA that's signed prior to an offer being presented, and that's a non-disclosure form, that it's not out of line to say, hey, you know what, if you can't get into the 750 range, really don't bother. Because why do we want to get why do we want the buyer's agent to get their client excited about something they have no chance of getting? That's at least my theory. And I have checked it. And it is not unethical to say, hey, you're going to have to be between 750 or higher to get this property, or whatever that range of numbers happens to be. And I give each agent that opportunity and tell them by 12 tomorrow, please give me your highest and best. And you can do an amendment to the purchase agreement as the form that you can use to better your offer. And if you don't want to better your offer, tell me by 12 o'clock tomorrow. The interesting thing, one of the best offers here that would have gotten been offered backup position, the agent never called me back. Their voicemail was full. I texted them because that happens to all of us when we just happen to have busy days and it's hard to keep up. But I texted her also, never heard back. So we immediately dumped her offer, even though it was one of the best. She didn't show us proof of funds. One of the things I was asking her to better her offer, show us that you have the funds. She was a lender real estate agent. So she was doing both, which I have to tell you, I don't ever get excited about those individuals. But again, one of the lower offers ended up being the best offer for our client with price, terms, and their commitment. I also find when I call each and every agent, it always seems there's one or two agents out of 8, out of 13 that always step up immediately. And in this case, both agents that had that verbal for me to better their offer had their offers bettered within 2 hours. And the next day, the others basically didn't better their offers. One removed appraisal condition. He's the one that ended up getting backup position. But it's a real effective way. Agents that I've run into really respect it because they say that most of the time we would never hear. And you've at least given us an opportunity to tell our client, hey, do you want to try to get it? Or is it simply out of our price range? And we're not writing a whole bunch of paperwork to 2 or 3 people, or in this case, 8 people to see what they were doing. They're able to negotiate with their client. You're able to find out too, by not countering and putting a set price in, you're able to find out that you did get highest and best for your agent. It's not always the best price. Sometimes it's better terms, but it does give you an opportunity that you haven't set a figure. A lot of people use multi-counter offers. They might have countered the other agents all at 750, and we ended up getting our client 755. Does that make sense? So it's really working. It's really having those conversations, as Heather spoke earlier, about how important it is to connect, one to the listing agent, one for the listing agent to connect with those buyer agents. And a lot of determination is based on, how I feel and how I convey to my client how the agent responded to, because some of the agents, I'm like, do you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, would you like to work the way they've responded initially here? Do you want to be in contract with these people for the next 30 days? And so a lot of people, the way the buyer's agents respond, if they do respond at all, is important in regards to going forward to attempt to have a smooth transaction. Again, really, really important. And the agents, I'll tell you, they really respect it because you never know. One of the things we learned in the REO market, there was people that handled REOs and were big REO listing agents. A lot of those agents really didn't treat us with a lot of respect. They figured we had it, you do what I want. And, when the market changed and REOs fell out of it and they had to start bringing offers to us, a lot of people remembered how they treated us. So how you treat other agents is so important for your career. And you have to think about that. It's important. Any questions? Wow, no questions at all.
Right.
I know some of you have heard me preach this before, but it's very successful. You do have to counsel your client right away when you list the property if you're going to do something like this, because they have to give you a lot of control. And I will tell the client that day, hey, we've got offers from 669 to 750. And now the joke is, now we're going to do the Randy thing, and I'll get back to you tomorrow afternoon. And so you have to sell your clients on that, but the clients you do, you make them really happy with the end result.
All right, thank you, Randy. And I have a couple of the way that I have done comparing multiple offers here on the screen. Randy, if you will send me the document that you and Parmeet have been using, that, yeah, and then I can send these out to everyone so they have a couple of options. I do a similar thing, and I just have a Google Doc where I go, if I have multiple offers, I put them in, you know, who the agent is, all of the details, so that a client can look at, you know, apples to apples, right? Because they often get so focused on price. They, if you don't make sure they stay really aware of what all the terms are, they might just kind of gloss over those. So it's really nice to have close of escrow and the loan amount and all of the details really across the board so they can compare those easily. Also, CAR in our zip forms, where's my share screen button again? CAR also has in zip forms a official summary of multiple offers. It has, you know, up to 5 offers that you can go in and fill this out as well. Just depending on, you know, what you're comfortable with, what you like. This one has all the good details. And it's great, like I said, to pass it along to your clients. You know, when you sit down with them and review those offers. All right. Go pop back over here, see if there was anything else I needed to touch on before we go over to, I think that was it. Yep, that was it. Any last details that you guys want to talk about before I invite Leon to talk a little bit about loan verification? I'm having trouble figuring this out. Okay, there we go.
I think this might have been touched on already with Randy's portion, but I also like to check and see if the buyers were making any effort to like shorten any of the contingency days, instead of just leaving them all boilerplate. And that might be another question that I ask a buyer's agent, like, are they willing to, you know, get rid of or shorten the inspections or the loan, like, and actually that'd be another question for the loan agent, is if they can shorten up the loan contingency period or any of those.
Yeah, it's all about us talking with both the lender and the buyer's agent to see what's possible. That really goes a long way. Yeah, I had an offer, received an offer, and it was just like, they just didn't fill in anything. They just they didn't change any numbers, you know, and it's like, did you mean to do that? Or is that really, you know, and it was a new agent. They didn't know, you know, so when I talked to them about it, it was more, you know, but then I have to tell the seller, it's a brand new agent, you know, there's some other pretty strong ones here. So great. Thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah, it definitely says a lot about who you're going to be working with if they didn't even bother to do that, or if they're new, like, yeah, it can be an indication.
Yes, definitely. You know, and I always like to help out the new agents, you know, it's like, I don't want to penalize them, but you know, they need to make sure they're representing their clients well, right?
I think we get spoiled here, or I think working for the company that we do, our expectations get set so high. When you come across other agents in the field, you're like, who trained you? Or like, what?
Go on. Great. Okay, so I want to introduce Leon Creed. He is with Pinnacle, and I can let him tell you a little bit. Leon, we would love to hear from you. Let's see, I'm not seeing Leon. You're here, right, Leon? I saw you earlier. Oh, there he is. Okay, great. Leon, we would love to hear from you. We already talked a little bit about when we receive offers, you know, when we're representing a seller, when we receive offers, how powerful it is to contact the buyer's lender and ask them about the qualifications of that buyer. what should we be asking if we call you or another lender to verify that a buyer is really qualified to, to give ourselves and our seller confidence? What should we be asking you?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I think it's important to understand the nature of the pre-qual or pre-approval that you got. And I say that because in my mind, there are three different kinds of pre-approvals. One is actually what used to be called a pre-qual or pre-qualification, which most lenders don't use that term anymore. But essentially that meant that the client and the lender had a conversation or conversations, and on the basis of those conversations, the lender generated a pre-approval letter. In my mind, that's worthless. It's absolutely worthless. A level up from that is a real pre-approval, and in that case, the loan officer gets documentation, gets a credit report, gets statements that show assets, gets tax returns, both business and personal, depending on the nature of the transaction. And the loan officer reviews that documentation. And on the basis of the loan officer's review and experience, they'll generate a pre-approval letter. What we're starting to do a lot more now, which I think is the most solid kind of a pre-approval you can get from a lender, is an underwriter pre-approval. The underwriter receives the same documents that the loan officer would review, but the underwriter has the authority to approve the loan. The loan officer does not. And that was not done very much in the past. And the reason it wasn't is because underwriters are such a valued asset and they get involved in so many aspects of the loan that lenders didn't want to tie up their underwriters doing pre-approvals. They wanted them working on live transactions that are happening now. Since interest rates started going up, refinances disappeared. They just aren't happening anymore, which frees up the underwriter's time. So what I'm starting to do now, and I know another number of other lenders are also, is I get all the documentation, I review it, and then I have it underwritten. I send it into the underwriting team, and the underwriter reviews it and approves it. So essentially, you've got a loan that's been approved with the exception of the property. We don't have an appraisal, we don't have a prelim because we're not in escrow yet. But you were talking about shortening the time frame between getting the acceptance and being able to close. From a lender's point of view, if we've got an underwriter pre-approval, it means almost everything else gets shortened. You don't have to deal with that anymore. What you've got to focus on is the property. That means the appraisal, the prelim, and any issues or repair issues that might need to be taken care of. That becomes a critical path to getting to close. So I would strongly suggest, if you're talking to your lender about the status or the qualifications of the buyer, you want to know what kind of a pre-approval was done. Having it underwritten by the loan officer is what's typically done. If you get started early enough and get your clients who are buyers to work with the lender and get a real credit approval done, it allows you to shorten all the other time frames. Then the most critical path is the appraisal. And with refinances going away, appraisers now have time. And you can turn appraisals around much more quickly than you could at the height of the refi boom.
Wow, great. And it sounds like it would really behoove us when we're representing a buyer to have them get fully underwritten so that we can write really short time frames and
That's
we're
exactly right.
as comfortable as possible that they'll have their loan.
Yep, that's
Okay.
exactly right.
Great.
Getting the underwriter in the loop and getting the real credit approval done is a major advantage, because then you can cut those time frames shorter. And lenders are much more willing to do that now that their underwriters aren't so busy with refinances.
Great. And how long, if you're not in contract, how long does that process underwriting usually take?
Oh, usually if you submit right now, it's probably, I'd say 3 days.
Okay. Not bad
You
at
know,
all.
once the loan officer has the documentation and turns it over to underwriters, it doesn't take very long. The thing that takes the longest at that point is the appraisal.
Right. And before that, it's just getting people to turn in their documents.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I mean, without the documentation, the pre-approval is worthless, whether it's the loan officer who does it or an underwriter.
Great. Hey, Rebecca has a question.
Sure.
Rebecca? Oh, she walked away.
I can go far. How long is an underwritten pre-approval good for?
It's generally good for 90 days. What will
Okay.
happen though is some of the documentation may expire. So like bank statements. If you've got bank statements that are 3 or 4 months old, yeah, they were good, but they need to be reviewed again. We need to get current bank statements. That's the thing that generally expires the quickest, because they have to be last month and the month before. So the most recent 2 months in the file when we close it. But that's not a big hang up. That's something that can be turned around pretty quickly.
Yeah, I just ran into that with the last offer I wrote, and he was able to get it underwritten within about 3 days, but the documentation had expired. So
Yeah. So the thing is, if someone is truly active in the market, from a loan officer's point of view, I want to keep their documentation current. I want to alert them to that fact going in, so it's not a surprise to them when we ask for more recent documentation.
Great. Thank
Yeah.
you. And I think it was Pippa had a question, Leon, about background checks. Is it standard that a background check would be performed on a buyer? And no?
Nope, I've never heard of it, ever. And I've been doing this for 35 years. Never heard of background checks being done.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting. Well, first of all, thank you for coming on and sharing this information with us.
You bet.
And yes, that was my question is, I have some clients who we're getting ready to close, and Pinnacle did a background check on one of the buyers, and it turns out there was some fraud case related to his social security number. So due to, we did a little investigating, and it turned out it was a total hoax. It was somebody in another state, but they did use his number, and so it caused.
Well,
I was also told by a Pinnacle lender that background checks are typical, and they're done through each escrow, and that they're also done on the agents.
well, yeah, that is true in this sense. Either when we get credit reports, the credit reports will tell us quite often if there is suspected social security number misuse.
Okay.
So that information comes across, but there is a form, and I'm not sure how deep it goes, that they ask, particularly if it's a government loan like FHA or VA, they have each participant, the seller, the buyer, the loan officer, sign a form that allows them to get some information. But I don't know, I never got the sense, or never called it a background check. What they do want to know is if you are legally licensed to do what you're doing. Sure. And they will contact the licensing agents to be able to determine if your license is valid. I know that happens, but when I think of background check, my sense is something much more severe or serious than thinking more jail records. Are you a criminal that where agencies are looking for you, that sort of thing. But they do there is I can't recall what it is, and I'll get the information to Heather so she can share it. There's a form that's signed. I'll get a copy of that form and get it to Heather, and you'll see what it asks, and it gives a reason for why it's asking. But I've never had it be an issue where someone at the last minute got nailed for.
I wonder if there's things that come up on the credit report, if that like flags that then.
The credit report flags a number of things. Yeah. I mean, the Social Security is the one that comes to mind right away. A Social Security number is inconsistent with the person's age, or, I mean, things of that sort that will trigger further investigation.
Yeah. And then my other question related to that was, how soon would that credit check be done? Because in our case, it's happening now at the 11th hour, and we are sort of in a great panic, wondering if this transaction will blow up. It seems the fraud situation is now under control, but I just would have presumed that this credit, if credit check is a better term, that it would have happened, a month ago.
Well, yeah, the actual credit check would have been done before the loan officer wrote a pre-approval.
Right.
So that's very early in the process.
And then is there a second credit check that's run closer to the end of closing?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there is. Because they want, and depending on the length of the transaction, how long it's taken, credit changes.
Right.
They check a couple of things at the 11th hour. A major one is employment.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still working for and being paid by the company you told us you were working for? That's a last minute. That happens actually between the time they sign their loan documents and the loan funds. So that's at the absolute 11th hour. They want to know you're working. So they will check with employers. They will want to know that, depending on the age of the credit report, they want to know that the credit report is still approvable. So
yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
John and Pippa. And Randy has a comment or question.
Yeah. So I've actually seen not only the title company that it pops up, but I can tell you in my career, I've had a couple of times that my clients hadn't stated that, typically seasonally they get laid off, and that second credit card, or the final callback if they're still have a job pops up. So Pippa, what you're talking about isn't totally uncommon. We had one last year that was close to close, and found out that the ex-husband, that they were still married, where the client told that they weren't married.
Ooh.
And he was doing federal time for embezzlement. And so it literally blew the whole deal up about 3 days prior to close. That it just popped up. And this isn't a Pinnacle thing. This is, it happens, unfortunately. And typically they catch that, hopefully in the middle of the transaction, that somebody's, identity theft or something like that. But unfortunately, it does pop up periodically. And it typically, I'd say 90% of the time, in my experience, it gets cleaned up and everybody's able to close. And there's those few times that it is actually the individual that, has some issues and they were hoping that it would skate through. So again, it does happen. Unfortunately, it tends to happen toward the end of the transaction on that second check. And, it's part of the wild, wild west of real estate.
Yeah.
Well, and that's when we feel it the most, right? Is when we're really deep into it, as opposed to if it comes up before we put in an offer, it's like, oh, bummer. But
Yes.
anywho. Great.
Yeah.
Leon, would you like to give us a 2-minute, what's your top loan tip right now? Can you hear me okay?
I'm having trouble there. I've got a landscaper outside my window
Oh,
cutting
no.
cutting grass. No, but it's interesting. Yeah, I got a presentation at our monthly meeting on Wednesday. Our CEO is really on top of what's happening with the economy. And he gives an update at these meetings. And he was telling us that we know that a big part of the housing crisis was caused because for 10 to 13 years, builders didn't build. And there are a number of people now who are asking the question, well, since interest rates have gone up, there isn't as much business for lenders. Housing prices should come down. And he was just indicating that based on his best information, I mean, it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen because building didn't occur for 13 years or so. Builders are starting to build now, but we've got a 13-year drought that we're trying to overcome in terms of available homes. And interest rates have gone up. He also showed us some data that showed every time in the last, this was over 35 years, that the Fed has raised interest rates, housing prices and sales have gone up. And I don't know what the ultimate cause of that is, but he was just showing us the data. In fact, we're going to do I just got a notice this morning, near the end of May, we're going to do a Zoom meeting. And those of you who'd like to attend, you'd be welcome to. It's going to be 30 minutes. It's going to be his perspective on what's happening in the housing markets and why. And he's going to share with those agents who'd like to hear it, the information that he's sharing with his company about what we can expect the rest of this year with regard to not only interest rates, but home prices and homes that are available to buy. It's fascinating.
Great. Okay, cool. Thank you, Leon. Does
You bet.
anybody have any oops, got some feedback there, sorry. Anybody have any questions for Leon or other comments that they want to make?
And Heather, I'll get you a copy of that form and also the information on the 30-minute Zoom meeting we're going to do to share some economic data.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And everybody, I did put in the chat, I put the link to that Google Doc that has that checklist and then the multi-offer form that I use. And I'll also, once I get the doc from Randy, I'll email those out as well. So,
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm just curious, since the part that Leon, you just shared about the fact that there weren't any new builds for the set amount of years. I'm curious about what loans look like for new builds, and would be interested in more information regarding that.
Well, I mean, it's the fact that it's a new build doesn't change anything from a loan point of view.
But are there loan products specific to like buying a plot of land and building a house on it?
Oh, well, that's different. Yeah, that's a construction loan.
Yeah,
There are
those available.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
There are loans available that will help build a house on a lot that someone owns or allows them to buy the lot and build.
Because it seems like that might be a solution to this lack of inventory for some people, possibly.
Well, yeah, for some people, it is a complex and tedious transaction to put it together
Yeah.
and make it work, and it is there. Most financial institutions don't do them, but we have sources that will.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Every buyer that I've ever had that wanted to buy a lot and build, once they really researched, like getting permits and the whole, they buy a pre-built. But it's a great way to get a client, right? Help them with that. And then if that's not the right fit, yeah. Because we
Yeah,
do
it
need more
is.
houses.
Yeah, it's a tedious and very involved and expensive process, but it's there.
It's there. Awesome.
All righty.
well,
Have a great meeting, guys.
all
And
right.
thanks
Yeah.
for
more
having me.
questions. We'll let everybody go and
Thank you all. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, everybody.
all right. Thanks for coming, Leon. Thanks,
You bet.
Randy.
Mhm.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.